Uyo, uko, kuno, aho, pano. Mama wanna get it, mama wanna get it nice. I know Buddha meso, I know Buddha zebe, I know Kaya Marigi.
Right, 10 September 2023, and today I've got a continuation of the issues that are taking place in Zimbabwe, specifically the view of the African continent on the re-election under controversial circumstances of President Mnangagwa, who is being accused of rigging the Zimbabwean election, and the AU, the SADC, the EU, the Carter Center, and basically all the observer missions have said that election in Zimbabwe was rigged and it's null and void. This is how the situation stands right now in Zimbabwe. And people around President Mnangagwa have been frantically trying to control institutions in Africa so that they can eventually overturn the negative perceptions that have been sent out by the reports, by the election observer reports, which have all concluded that the election in Zimbabwe was not free and fair. And the latest battleground is the Pan-African Parliament, where Chief Charumbira was basically fired on the 23rd of August and is no longer the president of the Pan-African Parliament, but he has been trying to get back to become the president of the Pan-African Parliament. And this is basically causing a diplomatic standoff between Zimbabwe, South Africa, Zambia, Malawi, Botswana. In fact, Chief Charumbira's actions have paralyzed the whole Pan-African Parliament, and it has become a circus. If you look at what is happening in the Pan-African Parliament right now, it is a circus. And Chief Charumbira is at the center of all these shenanigans. As we speak, there are two acting presidents of the Pan-African Parliament, which is odd and strange because the Pan-African Parliament is a very, very organized institution. In fact, before the arrival of Chief Charumbira, the Pan-African Parliament was a very organized institution. Right now, it is a pale shadow of its former self. And I just want to mention before I continue that I've given an opportunity, and Chief Charumbira's office had provided someone who was going to come and speak here, but they eventually pulled out on the last minute. Otherwise, we're going to ask them questions about what exactly is happening. I've also had a chat with Joseph Kalimbwe, who is in Zambia, who is being accused. There is a long letter that has been written today. If you go to gambako.com, you are going to see that letter, which is accusing South African businesswoman Bridget Motsepe of being behind all the problems at the Pan-African Parliament. They're also accusing former president of Botswana, Ian Khama, of being part of these issues. They're also accusing Miles Samba of Zambia, and also a lot of other people. They claim that people like Joseph Kalimbwe were paid and they were put on a plane to go to the African Union, where they were supposed to lobby for the formation of an organization which was supposed to be housed at the Gallagher Estate offices of the Pan-African Parliament. So this letter is very, very interesting. You should read it. But also at the same time, there has been another letter by the second vice president of the Pan-African Parliament today, where she made various reversals. She reversed various key decisions that have been made at the Pan-African Parliament. And if I take you to what has happened and why it is all happening, it's because Zimbabwe wants to have Chief Charumbira. In fact, ED wants to have Chief Charumbira as the president of the Pan-African Parliament, so that by the time they discuss the negative mission report, observer report of the Zimbabwe election, Chief Charumbira will be there to block that report, because certainly the AU is going to get that opinion or that final conclusion that the election in Zimbabwe was not free and fair. And Chief Charumbira is not supposed to be the president of the Pan-African Parliament. His term ended and he was no longer part of the Parliament of Zimbabwe, because by the rules, only 5 people, 5 MPs from a country are supposed to be seconded to the Pan-African Parliament. And when you are no longer an MP, you cannot be the president of the Pan-African Parliament. So he's trying to force himself back in there, but he's no longer the president of the Pan-African Parliament. However, I'm looking at this letter. It's got alarming allegations here and repercussions. So if you go to gambako.com, you can read the letter there. If you are not able to read it, you can WhatsApp me and I will send it to you. Let's see if I've got my number here so that I can give it to you, and you can WhatsApp me. I'll send it to you, the full letter in PDF. The activities of Chief Charumbira, they need someone to quickly deal with. He's basically saying the Pan-African Parliament must crash or burn with him. If he wants to leave, he's going to leave the Pan-African Parliament gone. He doesn't want it to be alive by the time he leaves, just because of the situation with the negative election report, which the AU is going to hear from the observer mission that they sent to Zimbabwe. But I think it's going to be an even bigger issue, because the guys in ZANU-PF, they do not care about any relationship with anybody. Right now, ZANU-PF is willing to destroy all the relationships with all the countries in Southern Africa. And no one is controlling them. No one is explaining to them that there is a space for diplomacy. You cannot just continue to do what the guys in ZANU-PF are doing, which is to attack everybody they don't agree with. So if you don't agree with ZANU-PF right now, you are either a puppet, you are either a sapper, you are someone who is being sponsored. The guys in ZANU-PF have become a menace to Southern Africa, and this needs to be sorted out somehow. I think someone has to step in and take control of the guys in ZANU-PF. You cannot second someone like who is behaving the way Chief Charumbira is doing right now. My understanding is that this afternoon, he was actually reported to the police after he continued to use the letterheads of the Pan-African Parliament without permission. He's being accused of embezzling over 12 million US dollars. And you remember that he made appointments to the Pan-African Parliament of people that with no discussion with anybody. And this includes discussions, appointments of people like Prophet Hubert Angel, who, as you know, was implicated in the gold mafia scandal. Just hold on here for a second. I just need to make a connection. One of the guests wants to join. Right, apologies about that. My guest is unable to join. I think Joseph Kalimbre was supposed to join me here today to have a further discussion on what is happening in the Pan-African Parliament. And as I said, you can go to gambako.com and you'll see the full letter there. The full letter that was written by Chief Charumbira, who I am saying is becoming a menace to the Pan-African Parliament and is willing to destroy the Pan-African Parliament before he leaves. So let's look at the letter here. Some of the key points that he makes, I just want to go through them so that we have an understanding of what is going on. All right, so there is the letter. which was written by Chief Charumbira. You can see this whole letter here. And I just want to read that one portion where he makes the serious allegations about Ian Khama and Bridget Motsepe. So let's look at this portion here. Okay. So this is a 7-page letter. And here he makes the statement that Dr. Gayo is not the acting president. He cannot make any decisions. He cannot fire staff. So there are many people that have been fired from Zimbabwe that have gone into the Pan-African Parliament. You can see, if you go to Joseph Kalimbe's page, you will see that Chief Charumbira was moving people from Zimbabwe. They spent almost, I think, 1.2 million on flights and hotels. And he was appointing these people without consulting anybody. And as I said, all this was done in preparation for the negative election report, which the African Union is supposed to get on Zimbabwe's elections. This is why they're doing this. And then he concludes here on 6.4. So you will be able to see this later. And he says, as has already been mentioned, one of the major sponsors of the cabal is Ma'am Bridget Motsepe, a South African businesswoman with close ties to the former president of Botswana, Ian Khama. A fight with His Excellency Charumbira stems from his refusal to grant offices at the PAP precincts to African Forum, an organization of former heads of states chaired by Ian Khama. Right, so you see that here we are talking about former heads of state. I don't know which former heads of state, and you must link this back to the Zimbabwe election. This is directly linked to the Zimbabwe elections, which are not free and fair, which have not been declared, which have been declared not free and fair by AU, SADC, EU, and all the other observer missions. So this is the context of this letter. They are trying to prevent any of these organizations from speaking out. And then he says, His Excellency Chief Charumbira has declined to do so in recognition of the potential ramifications of this move on both PAP and the AU's relations with the Botswana, given Ian Khama's fractious relationship with the current government led by His Excellency President Masisi. And this is why I want to say Chief Charumbira is basically crossing the line. If you understand why Ian Khama is here in South Africa, he's here he's basically a guest of President Ramaphosa. So Charumbira is basically trying to say he is got the interests of Botswana at heart compared to President Ramaphosa, who has got Ian Khama here. Does it make sense that Charumbira, who is here as a person from Zimbabwe, can say he's doing better than President Ramaphosa, who's got Ian Khama right here in his country? What does he say about the relationship between South Africa and Botswana? Does it mean that because Khama is here, the relationship between Botswana and South Africa is now worsened? And by implication, he's dragging up issues from the past regarding what has been investigated on Bridget and also Ian Khama. So you can see that Chief Charumbira is willing to go down with the whole Pan-African Parliament. And this is the way it is. We've covered this story very, very extensively. If you go to gambako.com, you will see a lot of stories there. The appointment of Hubert Angel, the dismissal of Hubert Angel, the dismissal of Ndamuka Marimo, the dismissal of a lot of people. There were a lot of people in groups, Facebook groups, newspapers that they were running on the side, attacking people. And all this, they were doing it in preparation for the negative report from the Zimbabwe election observer mission. So I want to wrap this up. We'll be covering this story. There are more letters that have come out today. The second vice president has also issued a letter, a long, long letter. And also there's going to be an election in October to replace Chief Charumbira and to replace all the other people that have been fired. So a lot is happening in the Pan-African Parliament, but basically that parliament is now a circus. It now serves no purpose until someone steps in and fixes that Pan-African Parliament. Right, and as I said, I've given an opportunity to Chief Charumbira and his people to come here. I spent the whole of yesterday and today talking to them, and they said they were going to come here to defend the actions, but on the last minute they pulled out because they said we published the Ndamuka Marimo story without asking them, which unfortunately I think is a lame excuse. I don't even believe that is the reason. Now let's look at Debbie saying what's going to happen with ED. Are they going to have government of national unity? If not, why? UN congratulates him. So I want to explain something, and I want to explain this in detail. The election in Zimbabwe has been judged not free and fair. So you need to understand that that's where you start. So all the observer missions that went to Zimbabwe said that election was not free and fair. It doesn't mean if an election is not free and fair, you can remove the president like that. But that president lacks legitimacy. So if someone else was to remove him, then no one is going to complain. They are going to say someone illegitimate was removed. So right now there are a lot of people thinking about it to say, oh, this guy was said is like illegitimate. What do we do about this? So that includes demonstrations and other methods. If that happens, people in SADC will be happy, people in AU will be happy, they won't complain. Because they're saying you're addressing an issue. If you go to court and he loses, there'll be a new election. That has happened in Malawi. However, there is a political solution that is possible, which is the negotiations between Nelson Chamisa and ED, President Mnangagwa. They can negotiate and then put in place the changes that are required to make the future elections free and fair. So if they agree on that, then they have a government of national unity or a transitional arrangement, which can last for a period. But before the issues with the elections in Zimbabwe are sorted, there cannot be a free and fair election. And ED cannot be the president the way that he was before. Right now, when he went into office, there is someone who is saying, I won, who's Nelson Chamisa, and he's also saying, I won. So there are two people in Zimbabwe right now who say they won the presidential elections. So I need to just explain to you, the GNU is a possible outcome. And that will depend on what the negotiation brings, because there needs to be a negotiation between Nelson Chamisa and President Mnangagwa. Otherwise, there's a dispute which is supported by facts, and the facts being the observer missions. Before, there was no observer mission report that said the election was not free and fair. Right now, we have reports to that effect. Right, James, he's saying you're watching from Egypt. I hope you're okay there. I don't know how far Egypt is from Morocco. There was a bad earthquake there yesterday. So let us know how far you are and if everything's fine there. Then let's look at, I want to look at a few comments here, guys. Then I want to close. I'm getting tired. I've been doing this for the past 3 weeks. And I'll have to get a break sometime. Let's look at Vincent. Vincent is saying, I'm crazy. Then let's look at Michelle is saying that days are numbered. God is not blind. God is not deaf. God does not interfere in politics. I always tell you guys, God, if you keep calling God and say, God is going to do this, God is going to, he won't do it. You have to do it yourself. The first step is you have to stop being afraid. You have to stop being afraid of ZANU-PF. That's the first step. Everyone in Zimbabwe, stop being afraid of ZANU-PF. They're not scary. And they won't kill all of you. So that is the first step. Right now, if you stop being afraid, look at what happened at Baba Phil's day. I was laughing. Go and watch that clip. That's a very dangerous thing beginning there. When people are no longer afraid of your police, they don't see them as legitimate police. Eventually, people will stop seeing anyone in ZANU-PF as a legitimate person. ZANU-PF guys have to do something now before they have to run for their lives, because they are pushing people so much into corners. And we keep telling them to negotiate, to take a softer stance. But they go out and attack everybody. They attack people inside Zimbabwe. They attack people outside of Zimbabwe. They mess up everything. They break the Pan-African Parliament. They don't care what they do everywhere they go. And eventually, everyone will just be fed up of ZANU-PF everywhere. and this is where we're going, and we're just going to be watching as this happens. But I think it's clear, self-explanatory. There is a problem in the Pan-African Parliament. Chief Charumbira was fired, and he's refusing to leave. He's currently going to be taken to court, or he's probably going to get arrested if he continues what he's doing using the Pan-African Parliament letterheads. And the reason why this is happening is because they are trying to make sure that by the time the African Union election observer report gets to African Union, they have Chief Charumbira as the president there, and make sure that that issue is squashed. It doesn't go anywhere, because no one believes the election in Zimbabwe was free and fair. In fact, SADC will have to go out and mediate in the situation in Zimbabwe. Nothing is going to work in Zimbabwe for the next 5 years if this continues. And that is why we have a problem. Right, Charumbira is very important. Charumbira is the chief, he was the leader of the Chiefs Council in Zimbabwe, a close relative of President Mnangagwa, and the president of the Pan-African Parliament since 2021. And right now he has basically crushed the Pan-African Parliament to the ground, caused commotion there, made serious errors and blunders, and appointed people there without any authorization. This has made the Pan-African Parliament a very powerful institution, a circus, as I was saying. So that is the answer for you. And I think everything's self-explanatory. I don't have to read through this explanation. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching. And I really enjoy talking to you here. This thing of young people talking about puppets, the West, I feel embarrassed when I see young people doing that. The problem we have in Africa is not the West, it's not the puppets, it's not anything. The problem we have is poor governance. Poor governance is the problem. When you hold poor elections, when you can't run institutions, when you steal and embezzle, this is the problem that we have in Africa. Not all these puppets and Africans. You saw what President Hakainde Hichilema said today. The people who are trying to fix are being called names. And that is the problem. The guys who are messing up our continent. They have discovered that people are gullible. They want to hear things about the puppets and the West and all that. And time is moving and everything's collapsing around us. This is the problem. Don't listen to this thing and don't fall for it. We've got a serious problem now where Zimbabwean problems are being exported to other institutions. Everywhere a Zimbabwean is now involved as part of the leadership structures. They're importing these problems from ZANU-PF and taking them to these other people. We need these election observer reports to be respected, and we want things to work in Zimbabwe. Then we won't have these issues. All right, thank you very much, everybody. And I know I can talk forever. Let's talk again tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to be handling another topic. Let me see what we're talking about tomorrow. Let's see what we're talking about. It must be something important. Let's see, because I want you guys to be aware. And during the week, we're going to be having Dr. Fedez Mteneri. So tomorrow, we're going to talk about Chamisa. Chamisa has approached the SADC. Let's see what he said. Very, very important. And this is going to have big implications on ED, President ED Mnangagwa. Good night, everybody.
Kuno abo bano mama wanna get it nice. I know pura meso, I know pura tebe, I know kaya marigi. Kama kwetu tikomu, wengine toti komu usasaire. anogaya mari.
Kambakwe uyo anotara mari anogaya mari. Garai mamunzwa pane nyaya pano zvamunoda kunzwa zvinotaurwa pano madiko kumunzwa mugovane.com. Kambakwe vanogaya mari vanotara mari vanoziya mari. Kambakwe vanotara feya kuti pamberi zvichafamba sei. Vanhu muteerere zvikubatsirei mukufamba kwenyu zvikubatsirei. Mirai ndikudze kuti chokwadi pano chizere. Kambakwe vanogaya cash vanopa mafacts vanotara straight vane evidence vane confidence plus intelligence.
Entertainment, current affairs and news. Kambakwe.com. Usasarire Kambakwe anogaya